Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga. Text 1. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha. Anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karoti yaha sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragni na chakriyaha.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated is in the renounced order of life, and he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty.
Text 2. Yam sannyasam iti prahu yogam tam vidhi pandava nahi asanyasta sankalpo yogi bhavati kaschana.
What is called renunciation, you should know to be the same as yoga, or linking oneself with the Supreme. O son of Pandu, for one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification.
Text 3. Aruksho muner yogam karma karanam uchyate yogarudasyam tasyaiva shamaha karnama uchyate.
For one who is a neophyte in the Eightfold Yoga system, work is said to be the means. And for one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means.
Text 4. Yada hi nendriyartheshu na karma swam anusajate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yogarudas tadochyate.
A person is said to be elevated in yoga when, having renounced all material desires, he neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities.
Text 5. Udared atmanatmanam natmanam avasadhyayat atmaiva hi atmano bandhur atmaiva ripur atmanaha.
One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well.
Text 6. Bandhuratma manastasya yenatmaivatmanam jitaha anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvat.
For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy.
Text 7. Chitatmana prashantasya paramatma samahitaha shitoshna sukha dukhesu tatha manapamanayoho.
For one who has conquered the mind, the supersoul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a person, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same.
Text 8. Jnana vijnana triptatma kutasto vijitendriyaha yukta iti uchyate yogi sama lostrasma kanchanaha.
A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied by the virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same.
Text 9. Shrinu mitrari udashina madhyastha dveshya bandhusu sadhusva api cha papeshu samabuddhir vishishyate.
A person is considered still further advanced when he regards honest well-wishers, affectionate benefactors, the neutral mediators, the envious friends and enemies, the pious and the sinners, all with an equal mind.
Text 10. Yogi yunjita satatam atmanam rahasi stitaha ekaki yata chitatma nirasir aparigraha.
A transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind, and self in relationship with the Supreme. He should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness.
Text 11-12. Saucha deshe pratishtapya stiram asanam atmanaha naiti uchritam nati nishcham chailajina kushotaram tatrekagram mana kritva yata chitendriya kriyaha upavishya shane yunjyad yogam atma vishuttaye.
To practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place and should lay kusa grass on the ground and then cover it with a deer skin and a soft cloth. The seat should be neither too high nor too low and should be situated in a sacred place. The yogi should then sit on it very firmly and practice yoga to purify the heart by controlling his mind, senses, and activities and fixing the mind on one point.
Text 13-14. Samam kaya shiro grivam darayan achalam stiraha samprekshya nashikagram swam dishash chanavalokayan prashant sorry prashantatma vigata vira brahmachari vrate stitaha manaha samyam machito yukta ashita matparaha.
One should hold one's body, neck, and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life.
Text 15. Yunjam evam sadatmanam yogi niyata manasaha santim nirvana paramam mat samstam adhigacchati.
Thus, practicing constant control of the body, mind, and activities, the mystic transcendentalist, his mind regulated, attains to the kingdom of God or the abode of Krishna by cessation of material existence.
Text 16. Nati ashnattastu yogasti na chaikantam anasnataha na chati swapna shilashya jagrato naiva cha arjuna.
There is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi, O Arjuna, if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough.
Text 17. Yuktahara viharasya yukta chetasya karmasu yukta swapna bodasya yoga bhavati dukkha.
He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system.
Text 18. Yada viniyatma atma chitam atmani eva vatishtata eva vatisthate nishpraha sarva kamepyo yukta iti uchyate tada.
When the yogi, by practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to be well established in yoga.
Text 19. Yathadipo nivatasto nengate sopama smrita yogino yata chitasya yunjato yogam atmanaha.
As a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist, whose mind is controlled, remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendental self.
Text 20 to 23. Yatro paratmate chittam niruttam yoga sevaya yatra chaivatmanatmanam pashyan atmani tushyati sukham atyaniti kam yattad buddhi grahyam atindriyam veti yatra na chaivayam stitas chalati tattvataha yam labdva chaparam labvam manyate nidikam tata yasmin stito na dukkhena guru napi vichalyate tam vidyada dukha samyoga viyogam yoga samnitam.
In the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from the material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact.
Text 24. Sanishchayena yoktavyo yogo anirvina chetasaha sankalpa prabhavam kamam tyaktva sarvam asheshataha manasaivendriya gramam viniyamya samantataha.
One should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with determination and faith and not be deviated from the path. One should abandon, without exception, all material desires born of mental speculation and thus control all the senses on all sides by the mind. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank
Hare-
you, Prabhuji, for
Hare
this.
Krishna. Thank you so much. Thank you, Hema Mataji, for nice Sanskrit recitation, and Sailesh Prabhu for perfect English recitation. Thank you both so much. Hare Krishna. We'll just share the presentation now. Just give me a second. Okay, so we're continuing our reading of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6. And as usual, we will just do the chapter overview, chapter review first, so far what we've studied. So chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga, we discussed texts 1 to 4, advancing in yoga through detached work, which was a little bit of a revision of the 5th chapter. Then we spoke about, Krishna spoke about rather the Yoga Rudra stage, giving up work. Then this current section is a big section, 10 to 32. Krishna speaks about the further stages of practice yoga, basically go deeper into the Ashtanga yoga, as we heard from some of the verses that Hema Mataji and Shailesh Prabhu recited just now. So today's verse 6.18. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, text 18. Yada viniyatam chitam atmanyeva sthitasthate nispraha sarva kamebhyo yukta ityuchate tada. When the yogi, by practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to be well established in yoga. So we have purport in just one thing about the verse before we move on the purport. It's just something that Hema Mataji, you can make a note about this. Sometimes when there's a Y here, for example, Y in front of a U, sometimes there's a Y in front of here, you get Y in front of a A. So you need to join the two words, otherwise the meter doesn't go right. If I said this, Yukto iti uchyate tada, that will become 9 syllables. We need 8 each. So here it should be Yukto it uchate tada. And here, Atma Neva, like that, Atma Neva Patisthate. Okay. So the Y and E, you almost pretend that U belongs to the it you. Okay. So that way the pronunciation becomes perfect. So purport, I got divided into 3 pages. So let me just get the names of the participants on my screen so I can see who's there. And we can select from there. So okay, Krishnagi Mataji, if you can do the first page for us. So let's see, Krishnagi Mataji, and then Meena Mataji, and then Mitali Mataji. We'll go like that, 3 pages. Krishnagi Mataji, Meena Mataji, Mitali Mataji. So first page, please.
Page 1 of 3, yeah?
Yeah, please.
The activities of yogi are distinguished from those of an ordinary person by this characteristic cessation from all kinds of material desires, of which sex is the chief. A perfect yogi is so well disciplined in the activities of the mind that he can no longer be disturbed by any kind of material desire. This perfectional stage can automatically be attained by persons in Krishna consciousness, as stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 9.4.18 to 20. 18. Savay mana Krishna pada pravindoyor vachamsi vaikut gunanu varnamne koro hare mandir majana dishu shrutim chakarachut satkatyodaya. 19. Mukund lingalay darshane drusho tadbrutya gatra svarshe ga sangamam granam chatat pad saroj sorobe Shrimat Tulasya Rasnam Tad Arpite. 20. Pado Hare Kshetra Padanu Sap Sarpane Shiro Rishikesha Padambhuvi Vandane Kamam Chad Dasya Natu Kam Kamayaya Yatottamam Sloka Janashraya Shrati.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Krishnagi Mataji. These are long verses, and I purposely was looking for you on that because I knew that you can recite Sanskrit that well. When I saw this page, I thought I must find somebody who can recite Sanskrit well, and I knew that you can. Thank you so much, Krishna. So Meena Mataji, for next page, please. Okay, if Meena Mataji is not there, then Mitali Mataji, are you there for page 2?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, please.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. King Ambarisha first of all engaged his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Then one after another he engaged his words in describing the transcendental qualities of the Lord, his hands in mopping the temple of the Lord, his ears in hearing the activities of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the transcendental forms of the Lord, his body in touching the bodies of the devotees, his senses of smell in smelling the scents of the lotus flowers offered to the Lord, his tongue in tasting the tulsi leaf offered at the lotus feet of the Lord, his legs in going to the places of pilgrimage and the temple of the Lord, his head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his desires in executing the mission of the Lord. All these transcendental activities are quite befitting a pure devotee. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Nitari Mataji. So next, Dilip, are you there? If Dilip is there, you can unmute and do page 3. Okay, maybe not. So let's see who else is there. I'm trying to find somebody we haven't heard from before. Naina Mataji, you able to unmute?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
This transcendental stage may be inexpressible subjectively by the followers of the impersonalist path, but it becomes very easy and practical for a person in Krishna consciousness, as it is apparent in the above description of the engagement of Maharaja Ambrish. Unless the mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord by constant remembrance, such transcendental engagements are not practical. In the devotional service of the Lord, therefore, these prescribed activities are called archana, or engaging all the senses in the service of the Lord. The senses and the mind require engagements. Simple abnegation is not practical. Therefore, for people in general, especially those who are not in the renounced order of life, transcendental engagement of the senses and the mind, as described above, is the perfect process for transcendental achievement, which is called yukta in Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Thank you all the readers for reciting so nicely. Om Ajnanati Mirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagazatam Sahagana Raghunathan Nitam Tam Sajivam Sadavaitam Savaduritam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Siddham Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deen Bandho Jagatake Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Charu Swaminiti Namine Nikta Cheta Supraneta Vagminam Charasaputam Prabhupada Prana Naumi Bhakti Charu Pada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pasha Tabhishata Prabhupada Ki Jai. So next 10 to 17, Krishna spoke about how to meditate. And now he will, the next few verses, he will describe the stage of the Ashtanga Yoga. So a yogi, he becomes perfect when his consciousness is perfectly situated in the Supreme, in the Samadhi state. That is the perfection of yoga. So as usual, we'll go ahead and just share some of the main points from the purport. So Prabhupada is saying let me just make sure I can see the clock on my computer. So I know what time it is. Okay. So okay, now let's try this one. Yeah, the activities of yogis are distinguished from those of an ordinary person by his characteristics, by his characteristic cessation from all kinds of material desires, of which sex is a chief. Prabhupada often quite boldly speaks about this subject, that sex desire is something that is actually what is holding the whole world together. In some of the material world is bound together by this sex desire. And when you think about it, actually, even if you think about some of the big wars, you know that behind many of the big wars, there was a woman involved, and everything starts like that. So in one sense, the sex desire is the very like the condition of this world. So there's a verse in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th chapter, Rishabhadev speaking to his sons, and he's giving him this instruction connected to this attraction between men and women. Pumsastriya mutyuni bhavametam tayor mito hridaya granthim ahu ato griha kshetra shtapta vitte kanasya moho yamaham mameti. The attraction between male and female is a basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusions and thinks in terms of I and mine. Everything becomes from this attraction of male and female. And this, as we know, it exists in all species, not just exclusive to humans. The purport is, again, I've selected some bits of the purport. Sex serves as the natural attraction between man and woman. And when they are married, their relationship becomes more involved. Thus, a person becomes materially attached to family, property, and children, although all of these are temporary. The possessor, unfortunately, identifies with his property and wealth. Sometimes, even after renunciation, one becomes attached to a temple or a few things that constitute the property of the sannyasi. But such attachment is not so strong as family attachment. The attachment to the family is the strongest illusion. So Prabhupada calls this illusion. Actually, it is illusion because we all know when we are not spiritual, we think this life is all in all. So everything that we're doing, my home, my family, my children, all our life is completely 100% in that consciousness. When we read Prabhupada's books and when we become conscious of who we really are, then we start to realize that actually, whatever that I am looking at, whatever I'm involved with right now, whether it be my wife, my children, whatever, all that is a passing stage. I have been here many, many times, millions of times, and I will leave this body, and I will leave the association of all my loved and dear ones, and I will move on to my next destination. This is the way of life. So you have a broader thinking then, you're thinking broadly, and then you're able to detach yourself, your consciousness slightly. I'm not saying that one should be irresponsible and not take care of our families, but actually, whilst we're taking care of them, we do it in a Krishna conscious way. And this way it helps us to remain detached from them. Otherwise, life becomes all about the material aspects, and we lose this wonderful opportunity of having achieved the human body to get success in this life. How a person, when he is alone, he doesn't have so much responsibility. You know, I can speak for myself, but I remember the times when I was a bachelor, you know, I could go and, you know, come and go as I please. There was nothing that I had to worry about. My friends would say, okay, let's go, you know, to Spain for a couple of weeks. And I would just basically say yes, nothing to worry about. But then as you get married, then you have more responsibilities, and children, more responsibilities. You get a house, you got then the mortgage, everything then becomes quite difficult. So there was a story, I don't remember it verbatim, but I'm just trying, I'll paraphrase it. There was a mendicant, a person just sitting on the bank of a river, and literally just spending his time meditating on the Lord. And he used to have a little hut that he had built himself, and he would just, whatever some people would pass us by would give him some alms, he would keep it in the hut, and then he would honor that when he was hungry. But there was a rat around, and then many times you would find that the rat has had the meal before he got a chance to eat it. So one time a passerby, a well-wisher, was saying, how's everything? And he said, no, but you know, everything is fine, but you know, I've got this rat who just, you know, disturbs and it finishes my meal before I have a chance. So he says, why don't you just if you keep a cat, then she would take care of the rat, and then you don't have to worry about the food then. So yeah, that's a good idea. So he gets a cat. And then, yes, the mouse problem is finished, but then the cat gets hungry. So he needs to go and either go and beg for milk somewhere, or wait for somebody to come and deliver some milk to him. So that became some botheration. So then he thought to himself, again, somebody advised him, say, actually, rather than wasting time going out begging for milk, just get a cow. Get a cow, and then, you know, you get enough milk for the cat and yourself also. So he says, yes, a good idea. So he went and he got a cow. Somebody donated a cow to him, so he got a cow. Then milking became a problem because, you know, as we know, the cow, if he just takes a little bit of milk for the cat, cow needs to be milked properly. Otherwise, the cow it doesn't feel well. Cow you have to milk the cow. So he says, oh, this is a motivation. Like I don't have time to milk the cow. Then they said, okay, if you get married, then the wife will look after the milking of the cow and the cat and everything. So you can still focus on your sadhana. So that's a good point. He gets married. As soon as he gets married, a few months later, the wife says, this hut is too small. We need to get a bigger hut. Then she says, I need more clothes. My clothes are tattered. Can you get me more clothes? And then children arrive. And of course, they need a bigger home. Then, but like this, it's a slippery slope. And eventually he ends up getting a full-time labor job somewhere and completely loses his sadhana. So you see how when he was so peaceful, only the rat was a problem. And then eventually his problem became much, much bigger. So yes, unfortunately, of course, we all, I'm not saying that we should not get married, but the point is, yes, get married and of course have your children, all that is our responsibility and all that, but we must try and remain spiritual and reduce our commitment rather than increase our commitment. That's the point. Continuing from Prabhupada's purport points, a perfect yogi is so well disciplined in the activities of the mind that he can no longer be disturbed by any kind of material desire. this perfectional stage can automatically be attained by persons in Krishna consciousness. So as soon as we become Krishna conscious, we start following the four regular principles, which is the beginning. So when we come, most of us, maybe we were not anyway engaged in these activities, but even if we were, then we would, first thing we'd do is stop eating meat, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit sex. So straight away we are situated better. And human life is meant for that. We need to be mindful of our actions and not just be dictated by the mind and engage in any or whatever activity the mind wants to do. So again, this is the chapter 5, Rishabdev's in Canto 5. Rishabdev is speaking to his son. This is the first verse. And he says, Rishab Uvacha, Nayam Deho Deha Bhajam Viloke Kashtan Kaman Arhate Vidbhujam Ye Tapo Divyam Putrakaye Nasatvam Sudyad Yasmal Brahma Saukhyam Tvanantam. So I've used this verse many, many times. And again, sometimes I'll do it purposely, so we get used to these wonderful verses. Lord Rishabh told his sons, my dear boys, of all the living entities who have accepted material bodies in this world, one who has been awarded this human form should not work hard day and night simply for sense gratification, which is available even to dogs and hogs that eat stew. One should engage in penance and austerity to attain the divine position of devotional service. By such activity, one's heart is purified. And when one attains this position, he attains eternal blissful life, which is transcendental to material happiness and which continues forever. So all our happiness, material happiness, is temporary, chapala, sukha dukkha. So, we have some happiness and then we have some period of unhappiness. And so like this, but the spiritual happiness, as this verse confirms, it lasts forever. So very, very powerful instruction for everyone. This is the important thing. So even dogs and hogs have a chance for sense gratification. Ahar, nidra, bhaya, maithunamcha. So these activities, ahar means, what does ahar mean? Anybody?
Food.
Food, yes, eating.
Eating.
Specifically eating. Ahar, nidra, that's easy.
Sleeping.
Sleeping. Bhaya,
Fear.
fear or defending, right? And maithunam, of course, mating. So these are the four activities which are common. How does it go? Samanyanam etam pashubir naranam. So pashus and nara, which means humans and pashus have these four activities which are samanyam, which are the same, right? But dharmo hitesham adhiko vishesho. Dharma is the only one which is adhika, which is different, separate, and which is vishesh, which is unique. Because dharmena hina pashubhi saman. So dharmena hina, so without dharma, without religion, without devotional service, a human being, pashubhi samana, is like a pashu, just like a four-legged human, Prabhupada just sometimes say. So this is the difference between us and animals. And if we don't take to devotional service, as it is recommended here by Rishabdev, then we are no better than animals. So this verse speaks a lot about the mind. This whole chapter speaks about a lot of mind, of course. The 5 stages of mind are, so you have muda stage. This is the lowest level, muda. So in this stage, the mind is deluded, dull and foolish. Then is the kshipta, where the mind is agitated and disturbed. And this is, generally speaking, this is where we live mostly, kshipta stage. Our life is generally like this. We're going through one problem to the next. So we're constantly disturbed. 3 is vikshipta, which is distracted. So even if you're not disturbed, we're still distracted. It's literally something else always is going on in our life. We cannot be peaceful. Then this is now getting to a better stage, ekagrata, which is resolute focused, oneness, right? That's ekagrata. That's when we are actually by practicing either yoga system or by practicing devotional service, we coming to this kind of focus. And then fifth one is niruddha, which is the control state. This is when we've actually managed to control the mind, right? And if you have managed to control the mind, then our devotional service will go very smoothly because we are controlling the mind rather than the mind controlling us. It's earlier in this chapter, I think text 6, we said, Krishna said rather, for him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. So we need to get to this niruddha stage of controlling the mind so that it becomes a friend rather than an enemy. And this particular ekagrita stage, focus stage, there's a verse in the chapter text 41 which talks about single-minded devotional service. Anybody know this verse?
Website Mika Buddhi. I don't know the whole verse, but I remember
Yes, there you go. Yeah, exactly, that's the verse. Yes, 241. Yevesayatmika buddhi ekaha kuru nandana bahu sakhayanantasya buddha yoga vasayana. So beautiful verse this one. It says, those who are on this path, which means the path of devotional service, those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, this is Kuru Nandana. O beloved child of the Kurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. The Prabhupada explains in the purport here, a strong faith that by Krishna consciousness one will be elevated to the highest perfection of life is called Vyavasayatmika intelligence. When one is awake in Krishna consciousness, he needs no longer endeavor for good results in his activities. When one is situated in Krishna consciousness, all activities are on the absolute plane, for they are no longer subject to the dualities of good and bad. The highest perfection of Krishna consciousness is renunciation of the material conception of life. This state is automatically achieved by progressive Krishna consciousness. So as we progress, we will get to this Vyavasayatmika buddhi stage, where we will actually be single-minded in our focus. And we know many devotees around us who are quite close to this stage. So it's not something which is just imagination. And Prabhupada says, the senses and the mind require engagements. Simply abnegation is not practical. So negation is not the solution. So again, a second chapter, there's a verse which talks about this. Anybody know this? Where he talks about the higher taste. (259). Vishaya vinivartante niharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Prabhupada, this last line Prabhupada quotes quite often. Right? Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for the sense objects remain. But seizing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. So the idea being that if we forcibly, so for example, a child is doing something, you want him to stop. If you force him to do that, he will maybe do that for a few minutes, but again, he'll get back to it. But if we give him the higher thing, give him something more, something that will distract him, so something better to do, then he will forget about the lower thing that he was trying to do. Prabhupada says in the purport, the process of restriction from sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a diseased person from certain types of eatables. The patient, however, neither likes such restrictions nor loses his taste for eatables. Similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual process like Ashtanga Yoga is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. But one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Krishna in the course of his advancement in Krishna consciousness no longer has the taste for dead material things. When one is actually Krishna conscious, he automatically loses his taste for pale things. So higher taste, a very important thing. Rather than forcefully doing something, we must think about engaging our senses in higher taste. So very simple things. If you like to eat chocolate, which was my weakness, then have Mangala sweets, and you get the higher taste, and you forget about the chocolate. Something like that. Prabhupada says, unless the mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the body lotus feet of the Lord by constant remembrance, such transcendental engagements are not practical. In the devotional service of the Lord, therefore, these prescribed activities are called archana, or engaging all the senses in the service of the Lord. So we heard about how Ambrish Maharaj in this purport, beautiful verses that Krishna Mataji read so nicely, speaking about how he engaged all his senses in the service of the Lord. So here it is explained in the Bhakti Rasamrita 1 to 234. Atashi Krishna Namadi na bhavet grahyam indriye sevul mukhe hi jivhadav swayam eva spuratyata. You see, right now, all of us, we are all in the practicing stage. So for us, it is very difficult to do what Prabhupada is talking about in the purport, to completely control our mind. It's very difficult. We can't even taste the higher taste. We can't even see or can't even recognize the higher taste. But what we need to do, and this is the practical advice here, material senses cannot appreciate Krishna's holy name, form, qualities, and pastimes. You see, because we're not appreciating it, we're not getting a taste for it. So we're still clinging on to our lower taste. But he says material senses cannot appreciate Krishna's holy name, form, quality, pastimes. When a conditioned soul engages his senses, beginning from the tongue, to chant his names and taste the remnants of the food, the senses become purified and one understands who Krishna really is. So this practice that Prabhupada is so nicely giving us, chant his names, take his prasadam, and this is just the tongue. But he said, because the tongue is the most voracious, if we can control the tongue by these two activities, by chanting his names and tasting his prasadam, gradually all the other senses will get purified, and we will start to then begin to understand who Krishna really is. And here, just today, by coincidence, somebody sent me this quote from Bhakti Samhita Maharaj. He says, by a deliberate conscious effort in a prayerful mood, by praying to Lord Krishna to help us to chant, we will be able to overcome the obstinate power of the mind. So I think that's it. Yeah, I will stop here, devotees, and I will open up for any questions or corrections, etc., etc. Yes, Hema Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for a wonderful class. Prabhuji, in terms of the temporary nature of our family attachments, I was just remembering the Chitraketu and his son is such a awakening pastime.
Yes.
That it makes you really think about how temporary our relationships are.
Absolutely. Thank you for reminding me. Exactly. That's a very, very instructive pastime, Chitraketu. How he was lamenting having no children, finally gets a child, and he's named Harsha Shoka. So happiness and distress. Because Narad Muni had told him that your son will give you this. And finally, when he loses a son, we know the story, just cutting it short, he is in so much distress. But finally, the son himself, when Narad Muni is able to revive him momentarily, gives him the gyan that, look, I've had many, many fathers in my past, and many, many fathers I will have in the future. This way he realizes the fickleness, the temporariness of this world. Right now, we are completely wallowing in it. So we just think everything is about me and my family and my home and my work, even my service in the temple. It's all about me, but it's not about me. We're just a little tiny cog in this whole huge universe, and we will pass on, and so will everybody else around us. So we need to try and make the best of a bad bargain right now, and rectify all our faults, and get ourselves back out of this world. At least get ourselves into a spiritual situation, so even if we do come back, we come back as a devotee. Thank you for raising that, Emma Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Thank you for such a wonderful class, Prabhuji, as always. Thank you so much. Prabhuji, one of the questions I have, only because, the last statement that you said was, if we can control our tongue and our mind, then we can control the rest of our senses. And Prabhuji, when you said controlling our tongue, that also means controlling, the food that we eat. Yeah. So Prabhuji, I would, and again, very honest here, I would say it's on last Friday. I'll just give you an example, Prabhuji. Last Friday, after a long day at work, after dinner and everything, I just wanted to eat an ice cream. There were lots of ice cream in the fridge, but I wanted to eat a particular ice cream. It was raining heavily. And I said to my husband, I'm just going to go and get that ice cream. So Prabhuji, I'm just showing you the example that it is extremely hard. I literally went to Tesco's in that rain to get the type of ice cream I wanted to eat. So why couldn't I control my senses that time? Even though in a normal day-to-day, Prabhuji, I would be able to on certain things, but I just couldn't on that day. So how could you be consistent in controlling your senses?
So thank you for being so honest, Navada Mataji, and I admit I do also get into situations like that, and it is not so easy. Like I say, it's we're all practicing, and with practice it gets better. Eating an ice cream is not so bad. I would say that's not really too much of a problem. As long as we're not overdoing it. But I think we're talking about more serious things. By allowing our tongue to drag us into eating abominable things, yeah, those things we must obviously control more. Eating an ice cream once in a while, I would say it's not at all bad. But yes, eventually one would train the mind and the senses to say that, look, if you're having an ice cream after a week, for example, then it's fine. Okay, we all deserve a treat now and then. But if you have had that ice cream on that Friday, and then Saturday again you go to the fridge, and again your mind says, I want the ice cream again, that's the time we have to start training ourselves. Say, listen, no. Initially, we can start off from a material point of view, saying that this ice cream is not good for me, for my health, for my sugar levels, for all that, right? So we can start reasoning from that platform, and refrain from the mind going towards that thought. That's number one. But then as we get more mature, we then don't need to rely even on the material things. We just rely on the fact that the mind is going to do this, and I'm not going to allow it to rule me, because I, as a soul, I am the boss. Right? There's in the third chapter, 3.42, there's a beautiful verse which says, Indriyani parayahu, indriyebhya paramana, manasastu para buddhi ye yo buddhe paratastusa. It says that the working senses are stronger than the mind. Working senses are higher than dull matter. The mind is higher than the senses. The intelligence is still higher than the mind, but he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. So we know from that hierarchy that I am the boss. So the mind, you have to listen to me, not that I have to listen to you. So intelligence, through the soul, the intelligence will say that, no, it's not the right thing for you to do. And the mind, I'm not going to let you have your way, right? So this way, we are able to then gradually, and it does take practice, a long time practice, to get to the stage where you are able to really control your mind. But as this verse and purport said, by artificially doing it, it's going to still keep dragging us back at one point. But by giving it a higher taste, so fine, you can have, even if you want to have ice cream. So what I would do is I would make my wife, like I can't make anything, I can ask my wife to maybe make some homemade ice cream, offer it to the Lord, offer this lovely homemade kulfi that my wife got a nice recipe for, offer it to the Lord and enjoy that. Then you're having prasadam, you're satisfying your urge for ice cream, but also having prasadam at the same time. So you are doing it both.
Haribol. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for the wonderful class. My humble obeisances unto you. For me, I would say that, like you're saying, the tongue, like Prabhupada says, the tongue is the most voracious. So tongue should be chanting Krishna's name and eating prasadam. For me, it is hearing. I think my out of all the senses, my sense of hearing is more powerful. Like even if I chant or before coming to Krishna, obviously I didn't chant, but hearing is like I always wanted to hear from the saints. I always like to read or hear. So that makes me stay in Krishna consciousness rather than anything else, actually. So I don't know.
Yes, Rupa Mataji, thank you so much for raising that. So yes, it is slightly different in the sense that, yes, hearing is very important. If you look at the 9 stages of bhakti, first is Shravanam. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. So Shravanam certainly is the first, because yes, we hear. It is also said that we should not, isn't it Prabhupada says we should see the Lord through our ears, right? That sounds contradictory, right? We can't see it from our ears, but we should see the Lord through our ears means that apart from just looking at the deity form of the Lord, by hearing about him, then we see him more. By hearing about his pastimes and his activities, then we see him more. So certainly hearing is a very, very important part of devotional life. And everything begins from hearing. So yes.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Jay Prabhu is saying on the chat box, he's saying, chapter 16 says we should be compassionate. Yet Prabhupada mentions being detached from the family. Are the two compatible? Oh yes, very much compatible. So as I was saying earlier, Jay Prabhu, that we need to be detached from the family. We are not speaking unless one gets to the stage where you are at the vanaprastha stage, going into the sannyas stage, where you actually want to, your children are grown up and you've got no more responsibilities. At that stage, you may actually want to leave home and maybe go and live in the temple or something. That is a different stage. But in what we are talking about in terms of detachment is not physical detachment. We don't want prematurely to leave our family or leave our responsibilities. That would be irresponsible. So we need to, when we're talking about detachment here, in a sense that we have to still look after the family, fulfill our responsibilities, but internally, by being trained up, by training ourselves, by reading Prabhupada's books and understanding the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, we are internally at least able to detach ourselves. So internally, we are looking after our family. And we have the consciousness that I'm looking after this family because each one of the family members is a spirit soul. So he is part and parcel of Krishna. So you look at them spiritually and you say that by my fate, Krishna has given me the responsibility to look after them. So not 1 ounce do we actually be irresponsible towards them. We look after them, we love them even more. Because when you see them as Krishna's part and parcel, we will love them even more than before. Just like the pastimes in the Brahma Vimohan Leela, when Brahma stole or kidnapped all the cowherd boys. And as we know, Lord Krishna himself expanded himself into all the boys. So what happened in that 1 year? All those mothers somehow felt a lot more love for their children because it was Krishna, right? Similarly, if you see our family as part and parcel of the Lord, we will feel even more love. So we will not be irresponsible. We will be still looking after them, giving them as much love as possible, but we'll be giving them spiritual love. And that way we are detached from the material aspect of the family. I hope that makes sense, Jay Prabhu.
Yes, thank you, Prabhu. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I mean, it says in other places, you know, it's in the Bhagavatam, says we should not lament for our family, and as if we're robots. That's why I really asked that question.
Yes, exactly. So lamentation, of course, again, lamentation will happen if we lose a family member. There will be lamentation because we were going to lose the association of that particular member of our family. So there's also nothing wrong with that. We know when Arjun, when Abhimanyu was killed, Arjun was distraught. But the difference is that when we are spiritually awake, that yes, that mourning period has become very short, because we would be heartless if we didn't feel any pain when somebody leaves our company like that. So yes, we do lament, but we quickly recover and realize the situation of, yes, okay, his time was up. My association with him was only so much. Now that person's gone. Now I need to just pick myself up and focus on my spirituality and pray for that soul that's just left. That's it. So you know, I know it's easier said than done, but I promise you that when we are spiritually a bit more strong, then these things can come quite easily. Okay, so it's coming almost 10 to 9, so we will stop here. Thank you so much once again. As always, so many of you join the classes every day. Thank you so much. All glories to your wonderful dedication. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhi
Patitanai Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo. Hare Krishna Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare
Hare Bol, everybody.